Hello, everyone. Welcome to our next session of Meet the Members of Empower Africa. I'm excited and honored to host this terrific podcast. My name is Shai Bernstein. I'm VP of Biz Development and Partnerships at Empower Africa. And we're having more and more of these because the business community is really growing and growing by the day. Before I present our distinguished guest, for those of you who are joining us for the first time, Empower Africa is a business community with a mission to drive investment, trade, and job creation in Africa. We believe in trade over aid, and that business is the best way to grow, build, and create sustainable and scalable solutions. We believe in bringing good people together and the power of synergy, and our goal is to create connections, optimize communication, and maximize the collaboration. Our business community brings together entrepreneurs and startups, investors, banks, PEs, VCs, family offices, government officials, multinational enterprises, and nonprofits, all of them in one place to really enhance the communication and collaboration that can be done. And speaking of bringing good people together, it's my pleasure and honor to welcome Steven Freidmutter, CEO of SF Ventures. Steven, thanks for joining us today. How you doing?
I'm good, Shai. Thank you. First, it's humbling and an honor to be invited to this conversation with you and Empower Africa and all the other conversations about Africa that brought me to this place. So thank you very much for having me.
Fantastic. It's our pleasure. We've had a number of conversations in the past. All of them were fantastic on so many levels, both from the personal perspective, the history, the business, a lot of different, levels there. So it's fantastic. Please tell us a bit about yourself.
Sure. Since this is a global group, I'll start out with I'm joining you today from Ithaca, New York, which is a small college town about 4 hours from New York City and the home of Cornell University. During the pandemic, I was hoping to be traveling to Africa, but because of it all, I've been based here in Ithaca, and so I thought I'd just like to introduce it that way. I was born in New York City, so that's where I'm from. But my story for how I got here and my lineage, I think, is worth me sharing because
Please.
it's foundational to who I am and why I'm here. So I'm a child of immigrants, and my father was born in Poland. 2 weeks after my father was born, his father, Abraham, left and had this feeling that there was no chance of survival for his young family, and left my newborn father and my grandmother, came to the US, got turned away from the United States, ended up in Buenos Aires, Argentina for 4 years,
Wow.
and eventually made his way to New York. My father didn't see his father for the first 4 years of his life, and sort of a miracle that it really happened. So, from my lineage and the whole reason my grandfather left was it was just because of what tribe we're from, that he saw there was no future for us. And so I know that this is specific for my family, but it's also general, and there's a lot of people in this audience who've had a
Right.
similar past. And so from that's super foundational to who I am, and just as importantly, who I stand with and what I stand for. And so I just wanted people to know that, because sometimes when people don't know that story, they just, oh, who's this guy?
Right.
And then, oh, I didn't know that about you. And so I'm very proud to be the son of David, the grandson of Abraham, and to be a survivor of survivors, filled with both like so much trauma and so much strength, and that's what it's going to take to change the world. And so that's where I come from. And I thought I'd just share that for
Wow.
people to know that's so much a part of why I'm here and who I'm standing with and why, what I
Fantastic.
stand for.
Thank you, Steve, for sharing that. That's fantastic. And so tell us a little bit about SF Ventures. You mentioned that it's an umbrella for all of your activities. We'd love to hear about that.
Great. Yeah, thanks. So I use SF Ventures as my umbrella for all different sorts of activities. So um, I'm 66 years old. One of the things that's interesting is in the world I'm in, I'm often the oldest person in the room, as well as looking different than other people that I've chosen to stand with.
Right.
After I had spent 10 years living in Costa Rica and learning what it's like in a small town in Costa Rica, how to be a small
Wow.
economic engine, spent 10 years there, owned a coffee farm with a view of the Pacific Ocean, and I became a writer before social media and reached people all over the world. So I saw that I had reach uh, I did business with people from India, from Europe, just from my little town in Costa Rica, before Facebook, before LinkedIn,
Wow.
and all that. So when I came back to the States, I was offered a position at Cornell University, a really super Ivy League university. They asked me to be a visiting entrepreneur for 3 years, from 2012 to 2015, to do what they call tech transfer. So the idea of like I'm a business person and I'm a connector. So Cornell has 3,000 patents, and they don't have a lot of business people, but they have a lot of geniuses. So the idea was to help them connect with people who would be starting
Right.
businesses, people who are investors, along with the geniuses, so that we could help the world create jobs and all the things we're talking
Wow.
about. I did that for 3 years. Cornell has since built a campus in New York City called Cornell Tech, and they have a much larger version of that now. Um, so I use SF Ventures as my umbrella for all the things that I've done over the last about 10 years. What I saw from how I've shared with you is to stand behind people who don't have access, and
Mm.
even though they might be twice as smart and twice as hardworking,
Mm.
for whatever reason, whether it's
Yep.
their gender, their race, their size, and so what I the first the one of the first things we did as SF Ventures was I invested in as a venture capitalist in two venture funds that both only invested in women and diverse founders, with the idea that
Right.
even though they're 50% of the population, they only get 5% or less of the funding. And if you're a woman with other diversities, it gets even less.
Right. Wow.
So the two funds were, one of them is called Chloe Capital, and one of them is called Astia. Um, Both funds invited me to be advisors as well. So that was sort of my start into this, getting into my 60s. And instead of backing off, I decided to be kind of post operational,
Wow.
but see, I have a lot to offer as a body of work, but not as, to build a company, but to be more of an advisor, an investor, a
Right.
mentor, and a friend,
Wow.
and some combination of all of those. Um, my surprise was when I started writing about that on LinkedIn, I started getting thousands of hits and letters and people inviting me to want to somehow
Wow.
have this feeling that I could be helpful to them.
Wow. Well,
So
that's a Stephen, that's amazing. And every time we speak, I learn more and more about you. It's fantastic. It's really fantastic. So who would you want to connect with within the Empower Africa business community and in general?
yeah, well, from this women focused investments, and I found um, I went to an event in New York City, and I met this guy from Africa. His name was Derek Ashang, born in Ghana, educated at Harvard, based in Los Angeles.
Right.
And even though I've seen hundreds of pitches, when I met this guy, I just said, this is the person I have to get behind. So I handed him my card. We spoke for about 45 minutes on the phone after the event. about 10 minutes about business and the rest just about us. And I got his story, he got my story. Um, I became an investor and advisor. And what happened from there is we got a group of African investors. So here I am investing in this African guy who, as an American, and then we had a whole group of amazing Africa venture capitalists who then invited me into their conversation. And so I went from somebody on the outside to kind of part of this incredible group of,
Right.
a company, the investors, the staff, and we met once a week during the pandemic. Here we all are. We were in 10 different countries. We met once a week during the pandemic. The name of the company is AMP Global Technologies. We filmed an African television show, documentary, music competition,
Wow.
gaming. We taped in 5 different countries in Africa during the pandemic with African talent, African filmmakers, and my belief in Derek and his co-founders, Lucia, Jonathan, and all the investors was the right thing. So it's
Right.
just shown, the Mike Africa has just shown on African television, and we've gotten 500 million media hits on our first season.
Wow.
500 million. Um,
Wow.
uh, we're now filming season number 2. And of course, with a finished product, we're able to deal with sponsors and,
Wow.
investors. And so that was my foray. In one sense, I never thought about Africa. And in another sense, from my background, Derek was the perfect person for me to get
Right.
behind. Um,
Wow.
from Derek, one of a couple of the investors, Eric Osiakwan from Chanzo Capital, who's also Ghanaian, we would all meet in New York City a bunch whenever they would travel.
Right.
And Eric introduced me to the African community, invited me to some events, and,
Fantastic.
and invited, and when I couldn't travel during the pandemic, uh, Eric and Zachariah George, who is uh, the managing partner of Launch Africa Ventures, who's also an investor in AMP Global. Uh, I couldn't meet these guys. I couldn't hang out with them, so I invested in a company called Digitech Africa,
Right.
based in Ivory Coast, that both Eric and Zachariah are on the board and a part of.
Right.
And so we're digitizing the insurance industry in Africa, and that's going well. But this is the lead into Empower Africa, is what I decided is I've been very fortunate to meet a few individuals to invest in while I'm sitting here in Ithaca, but that I
Right.
decided to get behind Zachariah George and became an investor and limited partner in Launch Africa Ventures because I trust Zach and he's on the ground in Cape Town.
Yeah.
And so we have I think it's about 40 investments now in startups in about 12 countries. And the way I came to Empower Africa and to meet you was Zachariah was giving like a keynote, a speech at one of your events recently. And the way I see myself is I just went to support him. And I went to attend the event, say a few things in the chat box. Uh, but from there, here we are.
Wow. Fantastic. Stephen, thank you so much. Before we wrap it up, we always like to, I always like to ask the guest to share a quote or a saying that they find, inspirational, that they resonate with. So please share with us.
Sure. When we were going over all these things, finding the quote at first didn't come to mind. Yeah, I couldn't think of what it would be, and I didn't want to be. But then I looked over
Right.
some of my past writings, and I saw one that's simple, but really, it's really the real thing. And it was just, don't give up. Life changes. Um, when I described my lineage and my own personal past, I've hit some low points, and I'm sure all of our audience has hit, whether it's love or business or family, some things where you just feel like I can't do it anymore. And the thing that kind of separates us is that life does change. And if you don't give up, great things happen. And in fact, the people who know me well, and I'm 66, and my whole thing is to be there for the next two generations of Africans. And that's who I want to meet, and to be helpful. But so much of it is just keeping people strong
Yeah,
and being there for them when it's hard. Everybody's there when, it's easy. So don't
definitely.
give up, everybody. Life changes. Keep your eyes up, meet people, smile. And
Yeah,
all of the things I'm describing to you were mostly just because I kind of met the right person. So thanks so much
fantastic.
for having me here,
Fantastic.
Shai.
Steven, my pleasure. We'll offline continue, of course, our conversations and other events that we're going to do together and whatnot. So thank you so much for joining us. Stay safe and healthy. All right. And have a good one.
Okay, thanks, Shai.
Thank you. Take care.
Okay.
Bye bye.